Namaskar, very good afternoon. Dear learners, welcome to CEC Live Lectures. I, Dr. Renu Toma, welcome you back on the topic which we have been covering, that was organizational behavior in school. We have been trying to study organizational behavior in school as to improve the working of the school, that is management of the school. Friends, in my last lecture, I talked about the key aspects which are there of the organization. I also talked about that what organization behavior as a subject needs to learn and why is it so relevant for all the administrators to have the knowledge of organization behavior as well as apply its principles as to improve the functioning of the school. So, from the point where I left in my last lecture, let us try to unravel that how organization behavior is to be understood from the perspective of education, that is in the educational institution. Here when we are talking about educational institution, here we are referring to the school because we have been talking about only school as an organization. We talked about in the definition which I gave to you, we said that organization behavior in education include the structure of the school, the process by which school gauges performance and how an educational institution respond to the change. Here the school respond to the change. These are the key elements which organization behavior need to understand and apply them. When we talk about educational institution, first question is, are they to be regarded as organizations? Yes, they are to be regarded as organization because one, they are consciously created. Second, they are coordinated for certain expectations. Third, it comprises of people, 2 or more people. So, and they work in an organized way, that is they have an organized structure. So, they are to be considered as organization. Now, organization operates to implement the task and functions to achieve the desired goal and objectives. From this definition, what we understand is that school, does it operate to implement certain tasks and functions? Yes, as we have discussed in our previous lecture also, that school functions to achieve the academic level of the student, to improve their personality, to create the good citizens for the country. These are the objective of the school and for which it operates. These are the tasks it intends to implement and it functions to have that. Secondly, as OB, from the OB perspective, we said that the member of the organization are dedicated towards the performance of their job and duties which are geared towards achievement of a common goal or set of goals. Here, who are the humans or the people who are performing in the school? When we are talking about the humans or the member of the organization, here we are talking about different people, as we said that there are managerial people, the core management as well as the people who are helping out the management, that is the administrative aspect of the organization. We need to understand that, and they are also the people who are working towards improving the performance of the student by generating the structural changes, by providing the resources which are required for improving the teaching learning. So, there is one common goal which is teaching learning. There is one objective as to improve the academic performance of the student, his or her learning, his or her skills, his or her personality, he or she should be able to play, or if the person is good at certain other aspects, not the educational aspect but the co-educational aspects, then that has to be applied accordingly. So, there is certain goal of the school and that goal is being adhered by all the members who are working in those schools. Thirdly, the field of organization behavior does not depend upon the deduction based on gut feeling, but attempt to gather information regarding an issue in a scientific manner under controlled condition. Now, this means that in the school, we need to understand that organization behavior is a science. So, accordingly, the students or the teachers who are working over there, they have to be studied scientifically. That behavior needs to be studied scientifically under the controlled conditions. So, sampling may be done as to come out with certain the studies need to be taken so that we can come out with certain decisions or suggestions or conclusions, and they can be applied as to improve the teaching learning. For example, in school we always go for action research. Why do we go for action research? Because we understand that the teachers, they have been trained to conduct the action research, and that action research will provide them scientific information about their students so that their studies can be improved. So, why are they doing it? They are doing it because they have accepted the fact that we need to be scientific so that we can have the actual behavioral change which is expected. Here when we are talking about behavioral change, we are talking about learning behavior change. So, the school organization, just like other organization, uses certain information, interprets the finding so that the behavior of the individual or group can be channelized as desired. So, what are the main areas which are to be talked about when we talk about organization behavior in school? One, what is the nature and features of organization behavior? That has to be understood. After that, we can understand that how they are to be applied or they are to be understood in the context of the working or we can say that functioning of the school. Second, scope of organization behavior. What is the scope of organization behavior, particularly again from the perspective of school? Thirdly, what is the need of organization behavior in education? Then we also need to understand what is the contribution of educational fields to organization behavior, because organization behavior as a discipline is picking up from various fields which includes education as well. It is picking up from psychology, it is picking up from the political science, it is picking up from sociology, anthropology as well as education. Because as all of us know that the Plato was an educationist, but he has given a lot of philosophical approach. So, philosophy is also one of a subject which is providing to organization behavior. So, organization behavior is based upon lot many subjects, and it is picking up from the perspective in which it has to function. So, the perspective, or we can say the core objective of the organization behavior, we have already discussed in our previous lecture. So, I won't go into the detail. For that, you can again refer back to my previous lecture. The another main area which we need to understand is career development for organization behavior. Why do we need to understand that? We need to understand that so that we are able to implement the policies of the organization behavior, learnings in the organization behavior in the school organizations in such a manner that the individuals give the best. For that, we need to give scope and space to the people who are experts of OB. And if we provide them career in the OB, in the school organization, will that be of certain importance? Will that play an important role in development of the school or improvement of the teaching learning behavior of the students? So, this is also one of the aspects which we need to take into the account. Another aspect which we need to take into the consideration is challenges and opportunities for organization behavior in the current scenario, again from the perspective of educational institutions. So, from here on, what we understand is that OB is a separate field of study, and it is not a discipline only, but it is a separate field of study, and it is an interdisciplinary subject. Thirdly, most important is it is applied science. And applied, along with being an applied science, it is also normative science, and it has humanistic and optimistic approach. Then it has total system approach. Now let us try to understand what do we mean when we say that it is a separate field of study, not just a discipline. If we talk about what is discipline? Discipline is an accepted science that is based upon theoretical foundation, but OB is multidisciplinary orientation. So, it is not just based upon specific theoretical background. So it will be better to call OB a separate field of study rather than calling it a discipline. OB tries to integrate the relevant knowledge drawn from related disciplines like psychology, sociology, anthropology. Its purpose is to make them applicable for studying and analyzing the working of the organization. So from here what we say is that it has interdisciplinary approach. For example, when we are talking about school, we will not be addressing childhood development in that course, then we wouldn't be able to understand why the child is behaving in such a manner. So we are trying to understand childhood development also, and who is dealing with the childhood development? It is psychology. So we need to understand psychology as an educational administrator, as a person of student of organization behavior. We should be able to understand the psychology. For that we need to understand the development of the children also. But if we are not a psychological person, we are not having the understanding of the psychology, or we are not ready to take from the psychology, then we wouldn't be able to understand our students well. We wouldn't be able to understand even the job attitudes, how that is being affected by genetics, because we have seen that the behavior is often affected by genetics, and the genetics is being studied as a medical discipline. In fact, it is studied from the perspective of clinical psychology also. So OB is drawing from various fields. To some extent it draws from medicine also. So OB roots in other discipline. When we review the topics such as personality, motivation, then we are talking about psychology. When we are reviewing the norms, then we are trying to understand the anthropology. From the sociological perspective, we can understand that when we are talking about decision making, then we are trying to understand from the perspective of sociology or anthropology. When we are trying to understand the power dynamics or the influence dynamics in the organization, we are borrowing heavily from the political science. So medical science is contributing in OB, political science is contributing in OB, sociology is also contributing in OB, anthropology is also contributing in OB. So all these are contributing so that the organization behavior can improve, can work as to improve the functioning of the organization. So field of organization behavior is studying of various aspects. It studies stress also, its effect on the individual. Again, it will be studied from the medical perspective. So again, the medicine has given in it. Those who study organization behavior, they should be interested in different subjects. Only then they would be able to understand several outcomes, like the attitude, the effect of attitude in the work on the working of people, how to understand effectiveness of the people, how to differentiate efficiency of the people, how to understand personalities. Why all these things are necessary for the person who is in the administrative job? It is necessary for a person to understand all these aspects, because only then the person would be able to have the counterproductive work behavior, as well as stakeholder orientation and the committed job performance. These are the aspects as an administrator, as a manager, the person is looking for. As a principal, these are the aspects which he or she need. For that, he or she should be having an understanding of organization behavior. Distinction is made in organization behavior regarding the level of organization which is being studied at a given time. So from that perspective, which we need to understand which are the level of analysis. We have understood that why the organization behavior is an interdisciplinary subject, and we have also understand that the manager should be able to understand the different subject. He or she should be having a slight orientation towards all those subjects. He shouldn't be even not the expert of all those subjects, but the orientation should be there. Only then the manager, here the manager when we are talking about, then it's a principal. He or she should be able to understand one's own personality. Secondly, the personality of the people around him. Thirdly, the personality of the students, how it is to be determined. So because the principal is basically working towards creating individuals, So personality making is also one of the aspects. So OB has to be understood by the teacher as well as the principal. Now let us try to understand that why it is called an applied science. Applied science means there would be scientific research, and if there are scientific research, they would be aimed at attending to certain organizational behavior problem, and those human behavior problem are to be studied from the scientific viewpoint. So that means it's an applied science. So but it is not pure science. Now let us try to differentiate why OB cannot be termed as pure science. Basic line of difference between pure science and OB is that while the former concentrates on the fundamental research, but the later concentrate on the applied research. So OB involves both applied research and its application in organizational analysis. So hence organization behavior can be called both science as well as an art. So this is the difference between organization behavior cannot be considered as a pure science. This brings us to another aspect when we said that organization behavior is a normative science. Normative science means positive science usually discuss cause and effect, but organization behavior prescribes how the findings of applied research can be applied to socially accepted organizational goal. So that makes it normative. Because OB deals with what is accepted by the individual and society engaged in an organization, that makes OB a normative as well as the part of the management theories. So another important aspect which we need to discuss is that why OB is being called humanistic as well as optimistic approach. Humanistic because it is about people, and if it is about people, it has to be humanistic. That means it has to talk in the favor of humans, because what is the core principle when we are talking about humans, that the human being who are being studied, or they should be studied for their own benefits also. The aim of studying them or aim of applying certain scientific theory should be to make them more efficient. And if you want them to work more efficiently, because they are human beings, they are not robots, that means they should be satisfied and happy. So it deals with thinking and feeling of human beings. So that makes it humanistic. And what makes it optimistic? Optimistic because OB believes that the human being has no level of efficiency and effectiveness. So if the individual has an innate desire to be independent, creative and productive, then the organization will itself become independent, creative and productive, because the individuals will come together to actualize their potentials as a group if they are given proper conditioning and environment. That affects the performance of the individuals who are working in an organization. So that makes it optimistic. Another thing which we have talked about was that it gives a total system approach. What does total system approach means? A system approach is the one that integrates all the variables affecting the organizational functioning. Now let us try to understand what are the variables which this system approach is talking about during discussing about the organization functioning. The system approach has been developed by behaviorists, and the behavioral scientists, they analyzed human behavior in the view of his or her socio-psychological framework. So man's socio-psychological framework make man a complex individual, and the system approach tries to study his or her complexity and find a solution to it. There are several objectives of the organization behavior. Now let us try to understand that. That will provide us to understand that why it is being called system approach. First, to analyze different perspectives and potentialities to create and develop the ethical value in an organization. This is one of the objective of organization behavior, that is, we have to understand the perspective of the individuals and potentialities of the individual. And why is it being done? So that ethical values can be created in an organization. So this is one of the perspective of OB. Secondly, OB tries to analyze the potentiality towards the ways and means to conduct and organize the system, methods and approaches for organization development in an organization. Now let me explain that. This means that OB is tried to analyze the potentialities. Potentiality means the potentiality of the individual, potentiality of the system, potentiality of the group, because all the three aspects are studied in OB. So when we try to analyze the potentialities, why are we trying to understand potentialities? So that we can understand how to conduct and organize the system, methods and approaches for the development of the organization. Thirdly, OB tries to analyze the potentialities to develop process, method and approaches of formal, informal pattern of organization and society. So this is third aspect of the OB. This means that in a school organization, we have to understand the potentialities and accordingly the methods have to be developed. We have to construct the formal and informal pattern in the organization as well as in society for the development of the organization. Fourthly, to analyze how to make perspective, method and process of effective communication to formulate ethical norms in an organization. So studying the communication, applying the communication, improving the communication is also one of the aspect of OB, and this is something which we have to do in the school to improve its functioning. Fifthly, another important aspect of OB is to analyze various aspects and factors affecting the group cohesiveness. This is also one of an important aspect, that is group dynamic. As a administrator, the principal should be knowing. Sixthly, principal should be able to analyze the ways and means to develop different ethical aspects from group dynamism, because group dynamism will exist, that has to be utilized for the productivity of the organization. Then seventhly, to analyze the mutual interest of the individual and group, and that mutual interest has to be represented by the statement, that is, the organization need people and the people also need the organization. So the organization has to work in such a manner that the individual is also satisfied. Then the eighth aspect of the OB is to analyze and evaluate the role of different key elements like people, structure, technology, interactive behavior and environment, etc. This means that the principal has to keep on working as to improve the organization. For that, the principal should be able to understand them as well as keep on incorporating the changes as they are required. We know that the OB means that we are talking about the behavioral approaches. So in that, the person should be artistic in temperament as well as having the understanding of the science, because here the person is applying the scientific principles as it is expected to be. Then the 10th point is that the person should be able to analyze the different aspects of work environment which duly affect the behavioral pattern and attitude of the person. So from here on, what we understand is that all these aspects which we have talked about when we talk about organization behavior, these are the objectives of the organization behavior. Now we have to understand that all these objectives shared by the school as an organization also. Yes. So organization behavior is very much applicable in the school as an organization. That means as a principal, the person should be having an understanding of all these objectives. We shall be discussing about these objectives in the detail in my next lecture. Till then, I, Dr. Renu Tomar, is signing off with the promise to continue with the same topic in my next topic. Namaskar, Jai Hind, very good afternoon. Dear learners, keep yourself safe and healthy.